All right, we're in the second to last chapter of the nutrition book. This chapter will talk about disordered eating and eating disorders and kind of the continuum on which that is, and also how in recent years things have changed a little bit, okay, with not just looking at people that eat too little, who binge and purge and things like that in the effort to be, super skinny. But we'll also talk about folks that can't control their eating and binge eat and do those things on the other end, how that whole continuum flows on what's healthy, what's not healthy, and how to view this. This is kind of a touchy subject for some folks. So I'm going to try to be as honest with you as possible and try to explain some of the things where people have trouble with this and some of the different culture thought processes that have come about with eating and how we view our bodies and so on and so forth. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. All right, so we'll talk about what normal eating is, disordered eating, and eating disorder. And again, I put that in air quotes because, again, what's normal for one person may not be normal for another. And there's some play in that. There's not a one normal way or one right way to eat. We'll talk about why eating disorders are classified as psychiatric diseases. Again, a lot of people may just look at it as a physiological problem. Somebody eats too much, somebody doesn't eat too much. But again, if it was just a physiological problem, we could just make the choice not to do whatever we're doing that's not healthy for us, and it would be that easy, but it's not that easy. Okay. We'll talk about the diagnostic criteria for anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and eating disorders not otherwise specified. Outline characteristics of anorexia athletica, and compare and contrast it with other eating disorders. Again, there's anorexia for non-athletes, and then there's anorexia for athletes. And some of the reason both might be anorexic are the same, but there can be some different reasons. Again, it's not that the anorexia is really all that different, but the reasoning on why someone might choose to have that particular eating disorder, or not necessarily choose but fall under that type of psychological stress to create that type of eating pattern. And then we'll state the prevalence of the disordered eating disorder in male and female athletic and general pop, and discuss its impact on physical and mental health and performance. Differentiate between athletes with eating disorders and those who are training intensely but do not have a disordered eating pattern. The appropriate response and explain the female athlete triad and how each component affects health and performance in those athletes, and describe exercise dependence and explain how it differs from overtraining. So normal eating is flexible, okay? And in recent years, you've heard a term maybe called flexible dieting, that relatively new catch term, but the diet itself, and again, don't think a diet is like a, okay, I'm on this diet or that diet. A diet is, like each one of us actually has our own diet. We have our own typical eating patterns that we do either by the foods that we like, by the cultures that we grew up in, by where we live, or some combination of all those things play into that. But flexible dieting basically means that you're not going to be too rigid. There's times where you're eating for things that, like eating for pleasure. Sometimes you're eating for health. And you mix all that in. Okay, so sometimes you're like, you know what? I need more vegetables in my diet, and so you may be a little bit more intentional with it. It doesn't mean that you're now cutting other things out or anything like that. You're just being a little intentional in that. There's other times where you're like, you know what, and I just want to go and have like a hamburger and fries and a Coke, and that's okay too, right? And it's a way of just being balanced in everything that you eat, making sure that you're getting the things that you need along with the things that you like, and you're keeping it within your caloric needs and not getting a little too crazy on not eating enough and not eating too much, and making sure you get everything you need and enjoy your diet, right? That's really all it is. Okay. And again, it's something that people practice for a long time, but lately, because there's so many fad diets out there, and there's so many diets that have to have these labels and names, and each one of them means, something different. There's so many, if you look at vegetarian, there's so many different types of vegetarian. You have vegans, which have the strictest eating pattern of vegetarians. You've got oleo vegetarians. You've got like pesca vegetarians. You got, I don't know, there's a few other ones that are in there. A lot of differences just within that subgroup of a diet tribe or plant. You've got keto diet, you've got HCG diet, you've got the Atkins diet, you've got the paleo diet, we've got the low fat diet, the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet. We've got diabetic practices for type 1 diabetes or type 2, pre-diabetics, and so on and so forth. So we have some that are, gastric bypass diet, we've got fighters diets. We've got some that are based on, so you think about it, you have some that are based on, clinical diagnosis you may have. You have some that are based on a sport that you might be a part of. You have some that are just based on, it's popular, whatever it is, you've got diet cleanses, diet juicing, diet, whatever. All right. And again, probably for the most part, most of it is a lot of stuff that we really don't need. A lot of it's, just some really, I think it's more detrimental to the health state of people. But there, some of the ones I listed are detrimental, and some of the ones I listed are just fine. So again, understanding those things and being more educated on those things is helpful. But understanding that flexible dieting is really not, it's just a new term on healthy eating practice, is what it is. Right? So it involves some constraints. You don't eat what you want when you want all the time, because again, if I think about like, a 5-year-old child, if I ask a 5-year-old child, what do you want to eat? They're going to be like goldfish, chicken nuggets, cookies, more cookies, maybe some more goldfish, maybe some more cookies, more goldfish, more cookies, maybe some more chicken nuggets, and that's going to be it. What do you want in the morning? Chocolate chips or chocolate chip cookies. That's what they would eat, right? So again, there's some constraint in that. You make some healthy choices, right? So you made one breakfast, you have pancakes. The next morning, you're like, I'm going to have some oatmeal with some bananas in it. Next morning, you may have something with, like an omelet with some meat and vegetables. You may make some choices based on some of the things that you like to eat and some of the nutrients that you need, right? And again, athletes' diets may be more constrained because sometimes they're going to lose some flexibility in the fact that they need certain things to meet with the demands of their training so that they perform at their best, okay? And again, some people may look at it, oh yeah, they're obsessed with it, because they're, again, you may look at some of your friends that are like super healthy, so to speak, and they're very obsessed with what they eat. And again, sometimes that can be healthy in the right context, in the right situation. But sometimes it can be obsessive and unhealthy. And with an athlete who's performing their best, you got to look at it as they're making choices because they're making choices and making sacrifices because what they're wanting. So if you look at very competitive athletes like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, those are two basketball players that I look at that, man, they want to win and compete and be the best of the best. And they just non-relenting in that pursuit. And so part of that you could maybe see with them, I haven't really read on what they did for eating and all that, but let's just say that they took that all the way to they put their time on the basketball court. They put their time in the weight room. But, it might have been the same thing. Their friends are going out to eat at this restaurant. They're going to have these drinks and this food and so on and so forth. And they may have thought, you know what? That is not part of the goal. Right now, the goal is my body needs to be in tip-top shape. I need to feel it perfectly, like you might. And it's okay for athletes during those times of, intense training and things like when you really focus. Now, again, they don't want to do that every single day, year in and year out. There's definitely times where those guys, during off season, whenever it is, they probably took a break. They're like, look, I need a break. I'm gonna enjoy some food, get back to it, right? And so there are times where they're going to be less flexible, and that's okay. And it's not obsessive. Now, again, if somebody's doing that all the time, whether an athlete or not, there's that point at which it's disciplined, and then there is a point where it's obsessive. And we'll kind of talk about, like kind of knowing the difference and the nuance of those, right? Okay, so when you're looking at this chart, you can see there's an eating continuum, and I really think this is a good way to look at this because you don't want to have like these lines that you cross. Oh yeah, I'm in the healthy eating. I just crossed for I'm eating too much. It's really not that. It's kind of a pattern because within a healthy eating context, you may have a day that you don't eat enough. Like say you're trying to maintain calories. We're just looking at calories right now. Monday, maybe you don't eat enough on Monday, right? So you just, you're like 500 calories short. Maybe on Tuesday, you eat right at your calorie mark. Maybe on Wednesday, you indulge a little bit. You go like 200 calories over, 500 calories over. So now, throughout 3 days, you kind of like maintain, right? So again, you could see undereating and overeating within just a span, but it's part of that continuum, right? And you have that one day where you're pretty much right on, right? You may go through seasons where you're eating just a little bit more. Maybe part of it's intentional. You're trying to, you're like, all right, I'm not training as much right now. Other than I'm going to the weight room, I'm going to try to get a little bit bigger and stronger. If I gain a little excess body fat, that's okay because my running and agility training and my cardio and all that's going to start in a couple months. So, right now I'll pack on some weight and pack on some muscle and whatever. And again, you don't want to go too far in one direction because then again, it makes it harder to go back. But again, little shifts like that are okay. Little shifts are okay. So let's look at the normal eating and then we'll kind of span out from there. So athletes' training diet, there's going to be some restraint, flexibility within a defined eating pattern. Again, no psychological issues within that. They're just, trying to stay somewhat disciplined and make sure that they're fueling their body right. They're getting all the nutrients they need. So again, you get a little occasional undereating, a little occasional overeating. Again, they eat when they're hungry. They stop when they're full. They're flexible in what they eat and how often they eat. Again, it's not like, okay, I got to wake up this time and eat. Man, guys, it's 12 o'clock. I have to eat right now. They're not that rigid. Okay, no psychological issues there. Now, again, anybody that's really, anybody that's somewhat disciplined in their eating patterns probably is going to have some small extent of a little bit of disordered eating, just a little bit. Okay, and again, like anybody that's listening to these lectures, if you're studying in the exercise science or nutrition fields, there's a little bit of the fact that you are getting so much knowledge, it's going to give you a little bit of disordered eating. And again, doesn't mean that, like you have a psychological issue, that's warranting going and getting some help or anything. But at the same time, I want you to be aware of that because, again, sometimes you're going to overthink what you eat and not eat, or you're going to second guess what you just ate. You may feel a little bit of guilt on what you just ate and things like that. And again, you should never feel guilty. I mean, you did what you did, and, like can plan ahead now. Like, okay, I ate way too much, or I didn't eat enough, and so now I got to make decisions for tomorrow. But that's the thing. If you've ever felt guilty, if you've ever like kind of obsessed or overthought what you did, you know, you got a little bit of that. And again, part of being in this field, it happens to an extent, right? And again, understanding that that happens will give you power to understand how to make sure you don't go one direction or the other, okay? All right, so I'm gonna go the normal pattern first, so we're gonna go this way. So let's look at disordered eating. Mild to moderate psychological pathway, eating and hunger are not aligned, okay? Eating becomes more restrained, less flexible eating patterns. Food is restricted or perceived negatively. This is, you know, again, and even in this book, sometimes they almost allude to good and bad food. There's no good and bad food, okay? There's no food that isn't, you should look at and be like, oh, that's horrible, I should eat that, right? Remember, it's the dose, not the food itself, but how much of it you eat, which can be detrimental to your health, okay? And weight and food are overemphasized, right? So when you're always looking at your weight, you're always, you know, like, oh, I can't eat that, I can't. That's where this starts to get out of hand, okay? And you've got to be careful about that, because this is a slippery slope. It's like any other, you know, you got to look at, because this is a psychological issue once we get down to eating disorder. This is like anything else that you might become addicted to, whether, you know, it's like drugs, alcohol, you know, any type of substance abuse and that. This can be in that same realm to an extent. You become obsessed with it. You know, you try to stop, but you just can't. And so you've got to, you know, you've got to be aware of the direction you're going, so you can make adjustments prior to that. Okay. All right. So then once we get down to the actual diagnosed eating disorders, so we got anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and anorexia athletica. These are significant psychological pathways. You'll see social isolation, body image shape distortion. How many of you guys have either yourself or a friend? You know, now if it's yourself, you may not recognize it, but you've got a friend or somebody that you know that constantly complains about their body. And, you know, again, it's not that you're being nice, but when you look at it, like, no, you know, they're like, I'm fat, or I'm this, or I'm that. You know, like, there's nothing wrong with you. You know, there's, you know, most people would kill to be in your position. You know, like that. You know, like you know, like most guys would like to have a body like that. Most girls would like to have a body like that. Or, you know, I mean, you know, people that are attracted to you would be like, wow, you know, you look amazing. But in their mind, they never look right. You know, they're either too skinny or too, you know, and that's the thing too. Now again, we're on this end, so more than likely at this end, we're looking at the, you know, they feel like they have too much excess body fat. Okay. Again, with that, their self-esteem gets really based on where their weight at. So every time they get on the scale and the number doesn't match up where they want it to be, you know, you know, like everything about them is just crushed, right? They have extreme control or lack of control when it comes to their weight. So they're, you know, they spiral out. So with bulimia, you know, like they just, sometimes they're uncontrolled eating, and then they have to purge, right? So they'll do stuff like either over-exercise or use laxatives, or, you know, they're throwing up after meals, or a combination of all three, okay? Or, you know, they have extreme control where they just refuse to eat. You know, their body's telling them, like, you're starving, you know, come on, feed me. And they're just, you know, in their mind, they're like, no, you don't eat, okay? They're inflexible in their eating patterns, right? They cannot stray, right? These are the folks that no matter, you know, like you're going to do something fun or you're on vacation, and they pack all their food that they're going to eat, okay? And they're not going to stray one bit. They're not even going to try, you know, like, hey, you ever had this before? Oh, yeah, we're in this country. This is the only place you can get this, you know, you just at least want to bite. You know, there's like 10 calories in a bite. But no, they can't stray, right? Diet overemphasized compared to other areas of their life. So again, their eating or lack thereof is almost like the top of their list of things. It's all they think about, and it's the most important thing to them because they can control it, or they think they can control it, right? Now let's go the other way. Now again, they don't have a disordered eating going towards the overeating, but again, you can see disordered eating going in either direction, right? But we'll go to that side. So again, at overeating, just loss of restraint, eating despite not being hungry, loss of control over eating situations, binge eating. Again, this is sort of a new concept in a lot of nutrition texts. Not the concept itself isn't new, but I remember whenever we talk about eating disorder and disordered eating, I've been teaching for a while now and going through books, and it was always at the other end of like people trying to always lose weight. And overeating was never really mentioned. Okay. But again, it can be just as bad, and again, it can psychological. We've trained our bodies, or we've trained ourselves to overconsume, to not make better decisions when it comes to the amount of foods that we consume. Always choosing caloric dense, maybe over nutrient dense, not really like making a nice pattern of adding some fruits and vegetables to some of the other things, like maybe eating fast food all the time and having snacks and all those things. And again, there's some stuff going on, as of late where there's some things that address this, and it's both healthy and non-healthy. So again, there's a movement called PACE, Healthy at Every Size. And again, the concept of this group, I really think is somewhat noble, but again, there's some danger in the way that a lot of people approach this. So again, if you're into the PACE movement and all that, I'm meaning no disrespect, because I actually do. There's some things that I admire about that. So again, I don't think people need to look a certain way. I don't think most people would, especially in my field, would agree with that. If there's a range of, like you can either be like really ripped out, and then you can have some excess body fat, and you're in this healthy range. Like if you're active, you're a really active person. You've got a good mix of things that you eat and stuff like that, and again, you're up in the upper range. So a little bit, you carry a bit more body fat than whatever. Most of us would agree. Hey, if you're going to doctor says, you're at the top of the range, but you're still healthy, all your blood lipids and everything else. That weight isn't causing you any type of any type of pain in your joints or anything else like that. And again, there's some athletes that have to stay in that range for the position they play in their sport. We're going to say that's all fine. Your body's healthy. If you're happy with the way you look, if you're not feeling, you don't feel that you're overweight, you feel happy with who you are, it's a great attitude to have. We don't all need to look like, like all guys don't need to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and all girls don't need to look like whoever, whether it's, and again, what people want to look like can vastly be different too. Some folks want to be big and muscular like him, other folks, some guys want to be maybe skinnier or whatever else. Some girls want to have more of a skinny look, some girls want to have more curves, and, and those things are all good and fine. But understanding that there's a point at which when your eating gets out of control and your weight skyrockets to certain levels, there are health consequences that come along with that, right? Where there, and again, some folks, and this is where I've seen some arguments, and they make sense, but in some regards they're poor. Some people genetically, no matter, they can get heavy, their body is just very resistant to health issues. So, they don't get maybe some sicknesses and stuff as easy as other folks. But the problem is you don't know if you're one of those people, right? So there's some folks that are in the, you know, obese range when it comes to body fat percentage, that their blood lipids and everything else come back fine. Somehow, you know, their joints and stuff actually do well under the stress of the excess weight they have, and they do just fine. You know, there's that point at which if they keep getting too heavy, there will be a point at which that, you know, no matter how good their genes are, they will start seeing some issues health-wise, okay? And that's the thing, is you don't know where you're at with that. So it's good to try to stay within the range, but don't be obsessive of looking a certain way either, or of having your weight at a certain thing. You know, there's that, like, if your body feels good and you're exercising and you're eating pretty decent and all that, then it's nothing to worry about. And everything comes back, you know, your health is fine, nothing to worry about, okay? So again, like I said, I admire some of the things that they're saying, but again, there's some folks that take it to an extreme of, you know, that anybody that's telling somebody, you know, like they've got some biomarkers that are, you know, as their weight increases, their health is declining, and their doctor or anybody else is approaching them and saying, hey, we need to get this under management. We need to get you exercising. We need to get you making some better decisions with your meal planning and stuff. To, you know, again, not changing your life 180, but adding some good, healthy things to your life. Some people feel like they're being attacked, and that's not the intention. Okay, the intention is, you know, making sure that you're healthy. It's not the way you look, but it's the excess weight and what it can do in pushing you towards having heart issues, or, you know, putting you more at prevalence for cancer, type 2 diabetes, musculoskeletal disorders, so on and so forth. All right. And so there, again, I'm trying to say this in a delicate manner, and I'm trying to say this in a way of being respectful to anybody that would watch this, because, again, you know, you know, wherever you're at with your body weight and all that, understand, you know, things, if you feel healthy, and wherever you're at, and your doctors and everybody else say, hey, you're fine and you're healthy, but you may not look, certainly be confident in that. If, you know, your doctors and them are saying, look, you need to get some things under control because you're starting to see some deterioration in health and so on and so forth, then we need to visit and making some changes and things like that. And again, you know, healthy at every size from a social acceptance should be, of course, you know, I mean, and that's the thing is, even if you're unhealthy, because of your size, other, you know, like you're not eating enough, like you could be on the anorexia disorder on the other side, people need to be loving and respectful in either way and helping you get to being healthy, some, you know, closer to the middle range, right? And again, that's the thing, it's not fat shaming, and it's not shaming somebody that's got, you know, anorexia or bulimia, you know, that is not okay. That the idea is professionals that work in this need to work towards getting people, not saying like you're too fat or you're too skinny, but saying your health over here is not good and your health over here is not good. We need to get you here so that we can improve your health and improve your quality of life. Okay. So disordered eating is just a deviation from normal, but there's no defined eating disorder, right? So you have not been diagnosed with anything. So because of that, it's not easily defined or recognized, right? And probably anybody that would recognize it would be either the person going through it or somebody that's really close to them, just knowing that, like, man, this isn't normal for them. So again, you need to consider eating within a large context of they have an inability to eat when hungry or to stop when full. Okay, so again, they're either scared to eat because they're scared to gain weight, or they just really cannot control the fact that they know they don't need to eat anymore and that they probably shouldn't eat anymore, but the temptation to eat more because either, you know, like some other folks are enjoying, you know, like whether it's a social thing, other people are enjoying food, they just, you know, feel like, man, I deserve this. I'm under a lot of stress. I just want to eat, like, you know, like I want to eat some more cake or cookies or whatever. You know, it's late at night. They know, you know, like, man, I've already ate enough. I'm fine. But they can't. They either can't eat when they need to, or they can't stop when they need to. Okay. Again, they might establish rigid eating patterns, and you'll see this on either side. Sometimes when people have trouble controlling eating too much, they get a bit rigid. And that doesn't help too, because what it does is it causes binging. And again, you see it on the other end, folks that may, they purge, and then they get to this point like their body's just starving, it's dying of starvation. They just binge and then they purge. You got these other folks that get too restrictive in their diet patterns because they feel like, okay, it's getting a bit out of control on the other end, and they try to diet, and they try some restrictive diet that just doesn't work for them. And, maybe they lose some weight over a month or a couple months or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's back out the window. Okay. And again, they overemphasize food and weight. I think that's a big key. And again, like I said, in my field, I feel like that's hard to not get into. I think about food and I think about exercise a lot because, again, I'm constantly studying it and looking at these things. And it's hard not to think about always applying it into my own life, and sometimes it's in helping thought process, and sometimes it gets a little unhealthy in the thought process, and I have to stop and kind of reset myself because working in this field, it's one of those things, like they talk about sometimes, folks that work in certain fields like like police officers, folks that work in rescue and stuff. Sometimes you see so many things and you're always thinking and looking at certain things that, man, sometimes your mind goes to some dark places because you're always seeing those things, right? Again, that can happen in this field when it comes to food and weight, right? And then overly restraining intake of certain foods, like just straight cutting certain things out and saying, no, I can't have that, can't have that, or, like you just really over limit, you've got a plate that's like this big, and you're always eating things that are this big, and it's just not enough, right? And so and again, you'll end up getting to a breaking point. Okay. So getting into the actual eating disorders, we're going to start with anorexia. So this is a psychological diagnosis. Characteristics are refusal to maintain a minimum body weight. So again, you've been going to your doctor or whatever, somebody sends you in, and the doctor's like, you need to weigh this much. And you're way below that, right? And they just will not get up to a healthy body weight. They just intense fear to gain weight. They always look at themselves. They feel fat. They feel like there's too much there. Again, you've seen, like there are some pictures of some folks who talk, they almost look like skeletal, but in their mind, that's not what they see, right? Extremely disordered body image. So there's two types. You either have people that are restricted, like they just won't eat, or they eat very little, like they're very regimented, and they just, they're always in a calorie deficit, like extreme calorie deficit, or they do the binge and purging. Okay, now binge and purging we'll get to, which is part of bulimia. So anorexia can actually encompass bulimia because you can be anorexic and bulimic. But you can also just be bulimic, and so we'll talk about that in a minute. So the prevalence of anorexia is about 0.5 or 1% of late adolescents and early adult female population. Prevalence of males is unknown because it's such a small percentage, right? So they don't even, it's such a small percentage. Now again, when you're listening to this, understand that they've looked at some different things that cause this. There's different pressures of where mom, you may have a mom who's very body image sensitive and she passes that on to her daughter. Then they've looked at, what's the typical female that's most prevalent for this. They're usually like middle class to upper middle class. So again, it's not a lack of food availability. We don't normally see this in folks of lower socioeconomic. We usually see this with people that actually could afford to eat and choose not to eat. Okay, I think in the female population, I think it's usually Caucasian females that seem to be the highest. I don't think that's changed in recent years. Most common age range is 13 to mid 20s. Started high school around 14 and college around 18 at critical times when they may get into this. And again, this is just putting in perspective of who you might see get into this for the most part. Okay? Diagnostic criteria, they got to take a DSM or survey questionnaire thing that kind of or like a diagnostic actually say they have it. Again, the main parts of that is they refuse to maintain minimal body weight. They have an inferior weight. The disturbance in the way they see their body is way out of line. They may be amenorrheic, so they won't have normal menstrual cycles, or they may be missing menstrual cycles, and there's two subtypes, right? What are we talking about? Okay. So again, if you look at this girl in this picture, extremely skinny. Not only the little body fat on her, but her body is actually wasted a lot of muscle away as well. And again, just refusal to get up to normal body weight for her height, right? So bulimia. And so bulimia, you can be anorexic and bulimic, but you could also be overweight and bulimic as well. Okay. So again, with that, we've got folks that purge and non-purge. Okay. But they have recurring binge eating. So again, you may have somebody that binge eats, and then when they purge or whatever, maybe they don't purge as much. So they constantly are gaining weight, but they have bulimic tendencies. And you have some folks that are constantly losing weight because their binging does not supersede the amount of purging, okay? Or again, the non-purging. So we'll talk about with the non-purging, right? Prevalence is 1 to 3% of late adolescents and early adult females. Again, we don't see a lot of this in males. The most common age range is adolescence and middle adulthood, so we see the exact same groupings that we see with anorexia. We use the DSM-4 testing again. So there's recurring episodes of binge eating, recurring inappropriate compensatory behavior, usually 2 times per week for 3 months. Has to be going on before it's actually, okay, this is a pattern that they're in. Undue influence of body shape or weight on self-eval. So again, they're very of where they're at, or maybe, again, with these, they don't have to have necessarily a distorted view of where they're at, but again, they're not happy with where they're at. Okay. Again, episodes are not related to anorexia, so again, you could have this and not be anorexic, or you could have both, right? So the purging method, so they vomit, so they self-induce vomit, they cause themselves to vomit, or they use laxatives, or sometimes you'll have folks that will actually use exercise as well. They do it at such a large amount, or they do it after every meal, and then basically like they almost try to figure out like, okay, man, if I eat this much, I got to go work out for this many hours. Maybe we'll see people do that. So they may have callous fingers from causing themselves to vomit, and again, teeth with little enamel from the hydrochloric acid in the stomach coming up. Okay? And then there's eating disorders not otherwise specified. So again, like EDNOS, again, there's, it's a psychiatric condition. They just fall into something that's just basically unhealthy eating patterns. But they don't follow, like it may be like individualistic. It could be something from they were just a refusal to eat a certain food because they have fear of it or whatever else, or they just have some unhealthy view of their body or eating or something that's not something that we've seen in other people, so to speak. right? So again, we don't have enough people to actually group them into a group, right? Binge eating disorders. So again, they don't, with this, they binge so much that it doesn't offset, and you'll see their weight go up and up and up until they are diagnosed with obesity. Okay. Again, same DSM diagnostic, DSM-4 diagnostic criteria. So they'll have recurring episodes of binge eating. Again, they just eat unusual amounts of food. And what they mean by unusual is they just food in large quantities, right? And they just don't feel that they have any control of that, right? They just, it's, somebody might explain it as ravenous eating, like they just, they feel famished, they're hungry, or they feel, sometimes you see this with folks that grew up in big families. They may have been one of the younger kids in a big family. And so a lot of times, the parents put the food out and the older kids grab all the good stuff first, right? And so by the time the younger kids get up there, the foods that they want were not there. And so now as they've grown up as adults, they've really they kind of had this distorted view of, get what you can when you can because it might not always be there, right? And so, sometimes those type of situations can lead to binge eating disorders. And again, that's not the only route. That's just one that I've been familiar with speaking with people and them going through that and just having this sense of, if I don't get it now, and again, if I don't get all that I want, I don't know when the next time I'm going to get this, because again, they may, say there's a favorite, I don't know, like a chicken dish that their mom or dad made or something, they may go so many times of that dish being cooked and never getting a chance to eat it because, all the older brothers and sisters got it first, right? And so that may happen. So there's a lot of things that can lead to it, right? And again, that's the thing with psychology is sometimes there's, we have a genetic, component that just drives us towards that. Sometimes there's, things that have happened in our life, so the environment that we grew up in can lead us to it, or some combination of both. So again, associated with rapid eating, eating until uncomfortably full, eating large amounts even when not hungry. So again, sometimes, just competitiveness. Sometimes I know with guys, this is something that I used to struggle with. I still do a little bit, is that I was always known as a big eater, right? And so whenever I was around some other guys, and they were like, well, I'm known as a big eater. We'd go to restaurants and it's like, all right, it's all you can eat buffet. Let's throw down and see who wins. And so again, there's times like I wasn't hungry and the other guy wasn't hungry, but we ate till we were sick. It's just, and again, you're uncomfortable full, right? And again, then there was always that, this almost like a reputation to keep up with that. That anytime I was out with my friends, got to show them who's boss when it comes to eating. And again, there, something that, is something that it never got too out of control for me, thank goodness, but I could definitely see that happening with some guys and some girls, just because there's kind of like, you're known for it, right? A lot of things can lead to that. Eating alone due to embarrassment, you're just afraid that people, and especially, that's one of the things, like if you're embarrassed about your body, so let's say you're overweight or obese, and you're aware of it, or somebody's made you aware of it, and again, you don't want somebody looking at you like, you go to a restaurant and you get this big meal that you want to enjoy, and you feel like people are staring at you, judging you for getting something that you enjoy. So then some folks are maybe order it to go and they go back to their house by themselves and eat alone when nobody can look at them, right? Again, then afterwards, feeling disgusted with yourself, right? Like, why did I do that again? That type of thought process. Right? Again, these are unhealthy things to think. Okay, and so again, when being that I'm putting this out there for folks in the bachelor's class, I want you to realize the amount of inner traumatic experience somebody that's going through this is feeling, and to address them with this, address them with respect and with the regard of they don't want this to be their life. They don't want this to be their normal. They don't want this to be what they're going through. And so help them walk through it. Help them to get out of it. And again, when we get to the point where it's an eating disorder, you've also got to understand that when that's of a psychiatric issue, that they need actual professional help. They need to be working with a registered dietitian, psychiatrist or psychologist. What they need and the types of help that they're going to need. And so again, you may be part of the team that helps them, because again, you may be working with them with their exercise or whatever else, but definitely be respectful. Be empathetic to what they're dealing with, and make sure you help them get the help they need and work with them. Again, there's a lot of folks in the fitness field sometimes can not be empathetic, right? And I'm speaking out of experience with this, because definitely I've told some of my students before, I can be very disciplined, and I can look at myself as very disciplined. And since, when I first started out as a personal trainer fresh out of school, I had trouble, and it wasn't with folks that were like overweight or obese or anything like that. But when I'd ask people to exercise and do things, and they're just like, no, that's too far, I don't do that, and I'm just not understanding. Like, you came in and said you want to change your lifestyle, you want to change your weight, or you want to change this, you want to change that, but you're telling me you don't want to do the work. It's really hard for me to understand that, and understanding that, breaking habits and lifestyle things can be very difficult. And that's something that took me a while to understand, that there's a psychology component to it, and helping people to work within those realms and help break some patterns and some habits takes time and takes some effort, not only on their part, but on your part as the person helping them. Okay? And then there's marked distress after binge eating. Again, this is going to occur on average 2 times a week for at least 6 months before they're going to say, okay, this is a pattern. And again, no compensatory behaviors. Right. Axia athletica. All right, so this is not included on the DSM-4. Characteristics would be reduced body weight and loss of body fat as performance related. So again, this is something that you may see in sports like swimming sports, diving sports, running sports, biking sports. Anything lighter may be seen as like better performance. So again, think of a long distance runner. They're training, but their body, say their weight's staying the same. They're thinking, man, if I can get a little bit lighter, I might get a little bit faster. Or again, with a cyclist, if I don't have to move as much weight around, I might be faster. Or like a diver, when they're trying to control their splash and things, like, okay, if I can be a little bit slimmer and more aerodynamic, that may, so those are some sports where their weight, and their shape and their loss of body fat, to an extent, there might be some truth in that where it does help them, but they've taken it to an extreme route, okay, where it's like, okay, you're now unhealthy with the amount of weight you lost or the amount of body fat you lost. And because of that, you're now, they may see their performance dropping off because, again, they're just not doing healthy practices, all right? So again, the loss of body weight results in a lean physique, which again, lean physique's not a bad thing, but it can be to certain extremes. Weight cycling is usually present. Restrictions of food intake and or excessive exercise is voluntary or at the suggestion of a coach or trainer. Again, sometimes we see this because people just get bad advice. Well, you perform better if you lose some weight, and that may not be the case. I worked with some distance runners, or I used to run with some distance runners, and I saw this. I saw the good and bad of this. There's a distance runner that came in. She was a very talented freshman. She got very obsessive with her weight and ended up having an eating disorder. And the fact is there was a point at which she was very successful, and as her weight kept decreasing, you actually saw her performance decreasing. Another runner came in who didn't have the typical body frame, body fat percentage that you might typically see in a distance runner, but the way she carried her weight and everything else, she was actually very, like she didn't look typical as a distance runner, but very successful runner. And actually the coach at that time was just very anti, like telling people to lose weight and things like that. His approach was, man, just train your hardest, do your best. It doesn't matter what you look like. Just keep trying to do your best to improve your race speeds. And she actually, didn't look like the typical distance runner, highly successful, right? And so kind of, that's the good of like really looking at something that's okay. Let's not try to get them lighter. Let's just have her train and be as strong as she can and do the things. And however she looked very successful runner. And another runner who was very successful. And again, I can't remember if maybe when she lost a little bit, maybe she saw a little bit more success, and then maybe that's what got in her head. But again, I remember there was a lot of pressure for her to try to maybe lose a bit more and a bit more. And again, she never came in at being somebody that was out of shape. So, it was really sad to see the direction that runner went versus the other runner. And again, they have the restriction of food based on bad advice, present while competing but ceases after competitive career ends. So again, their anorexia stops as soon as they're done with their sport, right? So after that, now again, you could have anorexia athletica, and then it could develop into just anorexia. So if they continue to have anorexic patterns after they're performing, it's now developed into just normal. I don't want to say normal, but typical anorexia, I guess. Again, prevalence is difficult to determine and not known. And again, what may not help is the fact that the athletes being told to lose weight. Wrestlers may eat abnormally during wrestling season, but generally do not meet the criteria for anorexia or bulimia. And the reason is because in fighting sports, whether it's wrestling, MMA, boxing, there's what goes on there is, they train at a certain rate and then they fight at a lesser rate. And the thought process is that if you can fight lighter, you fight lighter athletes. Now, again, the problem with the thinking is typically if you have a 165-pound wrestler that fights at like 150 or something, and then when they're fighting at 150, probably the guy or girl, wrestling, with sports that, guys and girls, like when they drop 15 pounds to wrestle or fight or whatever it is, their competitor, their opponent also does the same thing. So theoretically, they could both fight at 165. And to be honest, they would probably both feel better fighting at 165 than fighting at 145, or 150 or whatever it is. They drop like 15, 20 pounds, or whatever it is to get down. And they do this cycling of, they train and eat, train and eat, train and eat. They work at this, and then as soon as the time comes, they, really restrictive eating. They dehydrate. They do a lot of things to lose that weight, and they get down to where they're at the weight they're at, and however much time they have from weigh-in to the time they fight, they're doing everything they can to get some of those nutrients back in their body, right? Again, it's not something that they want to do, and it's not something that they feel like compelled to do by any means in the sense of like they have a psychological disorder in doing that. It's just part of it's just part of the sport, but that's what it is. And typically what we see in these type of sports is, as soon as they get out of those sports, or eating work, they have off season and stuff, they don't do that, right? And so it's only self-induced for the time that it serves their purpose for sport. Okay. Again, voluntary excessive exercise and exercise dependence. Again, that can be hard to define and quantify, especially in the athletic population, because again, with them, they may, you know, like they look at it as like, man, I got to work harder to achieve, you know, the things that I want to achieve. Okay. And so what's the intent of the exercise? Is it performance, or the intent of the exercise to lose weight or fulfill some body image thing? And again, that can be hard to figure out when you're not asking questions. And even if you're asking questions, you know, somebody may have trouble really defining, you know, like, no, I'm doing this, and this definitely isn't a healthy obsession that I have. Okay. So the diagnostic criteria is that when you notice that, you know, like they were moving up, or, you know, you got this competitive athlete that is now on a drop, and they feel like they're doing everything they can. You know, they're overtraining, they're undereating, or a combination of both. They feel withdrawn, presence, you know, there's, you know, like you talk to them, and there's definitely an eating disorder mentality, you know, again, or disordered eating mentality. Maybe it's not full blown, you know, we see the problems that arise from that. So again, prevalence, it's difficult to study and determine. It can be as low as 1%, anorexia nervosa in female athletes, and as high as 62% at any clinical eating disorder in female athletes. Again, there's not clear definitions when, you know, when it's disordered and everything. And so because of that, it could be much higher. And like I said, you know, many of you that are taking classes with me, if you're watching this and you're watching this on YouTube because you're like, oh, maybe this will help me with the nutrition class I'm in. You know, if you really do some self-diagnosis, so to speak, or some, like really looking in yourself in the way that you view food, you view exercise, there's probably some unhealthy mentality towards foods or food groups or exercise in some regards that you've either, you're either in the middle of, or you practice at some point or another, where you can say, okay, I can see a little disordered eating patterns in that. And because of that, that's why it's hard to diagnose, right? Because you may go through sometimes you're like, man, that's really unhealthy of me to think that way, and you've worked on yourself not to do that. Or you just don't see it as it's that big of a deal, and so maybe you're struggling with it and dealing with it, but you don't see it as an issue, and so you're not going to seek any help for it, right? More prevalent in sports that require or reward low body weight. So again, football is not one where you might typically see this as often, although, it could happen. It can happen in any sport, but definitely sports where there's, like distance athletes of any type, sports where folks are in bathing suits, in the water and stuff like that, and be more aerodynamic and things like that. Yeah, you're going to see a higher prevalence. Okay. Again, potential triggers in females, hiding may be an important trigger, and males, injury or overtraining may be important triggers. So again, you look at gymnastics as a sport that rewards low body weight, low percentage of body fat, and parents have higher prevalence of disordered eating disorders. And again, I remember a while back, and I don't remember which gymnast it was. I remember there's a female gymnast for the U.S. that, and I remember she's getting a little bit of backlash because she appeared a little heavy. I want to say it might have been Dominique Dawes for some reason that's sticking in my head, but I could be off. But anyways, I remember the athlete, I remember she was competing really, she's competing really, really well. I remember, in the media, they were sort of like bashing her a little bit. Again, you think about it, you're like, what does it matter what she looks like? If she can outperform the other women that she's competing against, it doesn't matter. I remember thinking that. And I remember the thought process was, yeah, but if, I remember one of the announcers, she was like, somebody kind of brought, one of the other announcers said something to that effect. I remember one of the other announcers said, yeah, but if she could tighten things up a bit, she might perform better. you know, she might be the best or whatever else. You know, and I mean, I can understand and understand the thought process of that announcer, and I think that announcer might have been like an ex-chemist or something like that too. So I mean, you know, there might have been some credibility with that statement. But again, you don't ever know, right? I remember sitting in some lectures, you know, or you know, going to some conferences, and somebody showed some different body types, and you know, they showed somebody like Kevin Durant, right? You know, you look at Kevin Durant, you know, like he's got his shirt off and everything, and then Kevin Durant, if you're watching this, you know, like, I'm not bagging him by any means, definitely one of, you know, like definitely one of the top talents in the NBA. You know, and definitely when you're healthy, you may be the top talent in the NBA career. You know what I mean? But again, you know, he made this point of, you know, he's tall, he's skinny, and even within that, he's not ripped up, he's not muscular. You know, they showed this picture and said, you know, can you really make a statement that if we went and trained this guy more and added a little bit more, you know, like muscle to him and maybe cut his body fat in some areas and all those other things, is he going to be a better basketball player? You know, and there were some guys in the room that were like, oh yeah, I'm sure he will be. And there's some other folks who are like, well, there's no guarantee, right? And really, that's the thing. I mean, he's, you know, top basketball player in the world. You know, again, you know, minus the fact they just, you know, had a Achilles tendon rupture, but you know, prior to that, probably the top basketball, you know, dominant basketball player. Even, you know, like you look at him and like Brian James is both very dominant. And again, you know, they're saying, you know, like he's not muscular enough and carries a bit of body fat, but there's no guarantee that if he changed up his physique, he's going to perform any better, right? In fact, he may perform worse. You know, I mean, that's a distinct possibility that could happen. You know, and so those are things you have to take into consideration. He made points of, you know, like he kind of pointed out several athletes, you know, and he also looked at some athletes that were, you know, like when you look at them, they're peak physical, just monsters, but they weren't the best athletes in their positions in their sports either. You know, so you got the, you know, there's no guarantee that if you're at top physical peak, that you're going to be the best at your position in your sport. And there's no reason that if you're not in top physical peak, you might not be the best in your sport. You know, so there's this range of, you know, and again, Kevin Durant trains. You know, that's the thing. He works out, he stays. I mean, the guy can play a full game of basketball and keep running and gunning and doing all those things. I mean, he's obviously in incredible shape, an incredibly gifted, talented man that works hard at his craft. He just, you know, his body may not be telling the full story, as the fact that, you know, somebody looks and they're like, well, where's his abs? Where's his big muscles? Where's this? You know, and so you got to take that into consideration, that just because you get somebody, you know, to either slim down or muscle up or a combination of both, you may not see improved performance. In fact, you might see in some athletes their performance could drop off, right? So that's a possibility. Okay, so these are the sports that are high risk for disordered eating. So women in ballet dancing, bodybuilding, again, man, some folks that just their eating, their view of eating, you know, it's just crazy. Boxing, and a lot of times I feel like in boxing, you know, to me this one surprises me because I feel a lot of times, you know, they do these, you know, the short-lived, like, okay, got to get down to make the weight. But I feel with those type of athletes, as soon as they get out of the sports, you don't typically see it continue. And again, it's not usually their inducement, but their coach's inducement in getting them where they need to go. Okay, cheerleading, diving, figure skating. Again, you see, you know, women. Gymnastics, women. Horse racing, jockeys are typically men, and you can see it in there because, again, you know, with them, man, the lighter they are, the less the horses get, you know, less weight the horse has got to carry as it's running as fast as it can, right? Lightweight rowing, martial arts, judo, karate, kickboxing, taekwondo. Again, you know, you fight in weight classes and things like that. Rhythmic gymnastics, running, middle or long distance, swimming, ski jumping, synchronized swimming, wrestling. All those have percentage prevalence of maybe seeing that, right? Ballerinas may be at increased risk for disordered eating because the body's appearance is part of the art of ballet, right? So people look at it that way, that there's a certain figure that you have to have, there's a certain look that you have to have, and then there's a pressure for those performers to have that look and have that body style and image. Again, athletes in sport with weight restrictions are at risk because, again, they go through these patterns of eating and not eating and eating and not eating, and it could be something that they develop themselves. Again, typically you don't see it, and typically in males we really don't see it. Again, those that have to wear revealing clothing. So I mean, look at those guys and girls right there, especially the guys' clothing is definitely more revealing than the girls in that particular picture. I don't see a guy on there that doesn't have ripped up abs. And again, if you got to wear that little Speedo, probably the last thing you want is for someone to be like, man, look at that guy, he's kind of fat. What's he doing? There's probably, and again, that may not even play into their ability to play or to be able to dive well and hit their dives. But, again, there's that pressure of, I don't want to be that guy. Or a girl's like, I don't want to be that girl. Right. And so there, again, that puts pressure on folks to look a certain way when it may not even necessarily be beneficial to their sport. Now, again, coming into diving and stuff like that, I'm sure that, being able to have full range of motion, which again plays into not having excess fat in certain areas, and the ability to minimize your splash is going to play into some of it. But again, there may be, in each one of those people in that picture, there may be some excess demands or image demands that don't need to be there that they're trying to live up to, right? That's definite possibility, okay? Right? So we hear this called like somebody's an Adonis or they have Adonis complex. So preoccupation with being just yoked out of your mind. So again, anybody that's in bodybuilding, this is probably a typical issue that they're going to deal with, because they may be big and strong and have a lot of muscles, both guys and girls, but their thought process is, I'm never big enough. So again, this is eating continuum example for Karen, the cross-country runner. So this kind of shows you things that she may have dealt with along the eating continuum. So you can see freshman year, junior year, sophomore year, she's moving down the list, junior year. And she had some issues in her junior year that, she started getting controlled, by the, she got worse and worse, right? And you look at, during her years in high school, she was in a normal eating pattern, but the pressures just got too much as she got to college, right? And, again, it's not typical for every runner, but this could happen, right? So again, normal dysfunctional behaviors. So shared features, high level of training and established eating plan, right? So there's a disciplined athlete, and then there's a eating disordered athlete, and it may be hard to distinguish based on their eating plans. Body comp or weight goals. Again, they want, they may think that if they physically look a certain way or weigh a certain way, again, there's a healthy view at that, like, all right, if I can get this other 5 pounds, I'll probably be right at that range. So, they can see like, okay, if I get to this, I feel like I'm going to be where I need to be. And so that could be healthy, and that could also be disordered, right? Normal behaviors, training is purposeful. It's all about, improving performance. It's not about looking a certain way. They don't obsess about it. They don't worry about it all the time, feel guilty about it. Food intake is monitored but not controlled. So, they're aware of what they're eating, but they're not so strict, or they feel guilty if they mess up, right? Again, the diet is planned, but there's some flexibility in that. So again, if they, stray a little bit this way or stray a little bit that way, they're not now like, oh, I got to throw up, or I got to do this, and then I got to go work out an extra 2 hours. Okay. Dysfunctional behaviors, training is excessive. The food intake is too controlled. diet is rigid and no flexibility in that. You know, like your friends want to go out to eat, no, can't go. Right? You're just like, it's gonna mess me up, can't do it. Actions, perceptions, and outcomes are very different. Performance in folks that are non-dysfunctional, those that are dysfunctional, they may see improvement at first, which actually makes them think what they're doing is right, but eventually they'll see some decline. Body image, accurate, right? I mean, you know, there's some folks that can be very accurate in the way they look. They're like, you know, I look pretty good. You know, if I cut this down just to you know, some people might be like, yeah, if I can lose like 2 or 3 pounds, I'll be exactly what I want. You know, yeah, they lose 2 or 3 pounds, and if they're happy, they're like, yeah, this is exactly what I want, where I want to be. You know, they had a good, accurate image of what they wanted and what they wanted to be. Inaccurate would be they lose a little bit, and they're like, nope, it's not enough. And they lose a little bit more, nope, it's not enough. You know, and now it's like they're just obsessed with it, and they, you know, here's where their ideal weight was, and now they're well below them. Or you get folks on the other hand, and that's the other thing where, you know, where the healthy at every size can come into play is because you have some folks that are in an unhealthy weight range. They're actually seeing health issues, but they keep telling, no, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm okay. You know, I'm way up here, but I'm okay and I'm fine. Doctor doesn't know what they're talking about. You know, I know my body hurts, or I know I got these joint issues now. I know I've got this heart issue, but it's not because of my weight. It's not because of my weight. You know, I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm healthy. And they're not. So it can be under or it could be over, right? Muscle mass, you know, is either maintained, or as they keep losing, their body is now having to use amino acids for energy. So they start losing what they need to be successful. And kilocalories are either sufficient for the amount of training they're doing, or they're insufficient, right? They're under the mark. So when and how to intervene. Early intervention, you know, again, if you can catch them before it becomes a full-blown psychological issue, great. Again, professional behavior, you don't want to go around like saying, oh yeah, they got an eating disorder problem, they got all, you know, issues, right? And again, you know, tell their teammates like, hey, you need to keep a watch on Sarah. I think she's, you know, bulimic or anorexic or whatever. Again, approach the athlete, refer to a trained professional for an eval. You know, so again, you as a coach or fitness trainer or strength coach or nutrition, you know, maybe you're the sports nutritionist, but you're not a registered dietitian or psychologist. You're not the person that's going to help them through this. You got to send them to a professional psychologist, and then they have to go to a little bit more professional eating intervention with the registered dietitian. Okay. Again, they need to be placed in a treatment program, and treatment involves psychological, nutritional, and medical interventions. Okay. So again, they you know, they need to see a psychiatrist. They need nutritional intervention and medical interventions possibly to fix their disorder. Okay. Certain personality traits are associated with it. So people that have a perfectionistic view, like they have to be perfect. You know, these are folks that like, they obsess over getting a 97 on a test. Why didn't I get the 100, right? I mean, you know, it's like, look, you still got the highest grade in the class, you know, but you weren't perfect, right? Obsessive compulsive disorders are more over compliant, right? They're always trying to meet everybody's demands, you know, and almost be perfect in that. Extremely competitive people can have a higher percentage chance, right? And again, coaches may unknowingly contribute to it, right? To disorder eating or eating disorder. Or sometimes, you know, they may knowingly do it and they think, oh, I'm not contributing to the eating disorder eating. I'm, you know, if I can get them, you know, lighter, they'll be better. No, it's not your job. You know, you need to help them with their performance. And again, you need to help them do that in a way where you're not shaming them and sending them in that direction. Okay. So normal and abnormal eating patterns. So again, you know, if it's normal, they should see improvement in performance, not a decline. Again, their training is purposeful training. They're not overtraining. And again, they're not excessive. You know, they're not, you know, constantly doing it to like, okay, I ate and I'm going to exercise or whatever. They self-impose their overtraining. You know, they freak out if they eat too much and they can't exercise or whatever else. Energy intake, their caloric intake's monitored. They're disciplined, but they don't obsess over it. You know, it's not, they're all consuming about what they ate, okay? Perspective on food. Food is needed to fuel training. Eating is enjoyed, eat positively. You know, sometimes they eat what they like. Those that are disordered are going to need to be restricted. They feel like eating is not enjoyable. It's viewed negatively. You know, like they're scared to eat. They're scared to gain weight. You know, they feel it like it's just something I have to do or something like that. Right? Dietary intake, consumption of healthy foods and adequate kilocalories. No concern about the occasional fun eating, I call it, or low nutrient dense foods. If it's unhealthy, consumption of healthy foods, but they don't eat enough kilocalories, and they consume or absolutely refuse to eat certain foods. Right? Fear, body image, you know, they look and they can give you a pretty accurate description of where they're at. Somebody else is like, no, I'm too fat, or no, I'm too skinny, or no, I'm too this and too that, and it doesn't match up with what everybody else would typically say they are. Okay. Body comp, realistic weight and body comp goals that improve or maintain performance. Goals are attainable without compromising health. On the other hand, unrealistic weight and body comp goals that do not improve or maintain performance. Goals are not attainable without compromising health. Muscle mass, increase or maintain the muscle mass that they need with the resistance training to be successful in their sport. On the other hand, those that eating disordered eating will decrease, or they're just not going to be able to maintain the muscle mass because the body has to use it to fuel. Okay? And again, we talked about the sports in which low body weight sometimes is attributed with better performance, puts them at a higher risk for having problems. Okay? Female athlete triad. So again, what you'll see with this is you'll have someone that has an eating disorder. Because of that, they become they'll start to have osteoporosis and amenorrhea. Okay, so they will have unpredictable period cycles and things, or they'll lose them altogether. And again, you'll see their bone mineral density decline at unhealthy rates as well until they become osteoporotic. General characteristics, disordered eating, amenorrhea, like I said, and osteoporosis. Prevalence, again, it's hard to determine. Any physically active female is at risk for the triad, and elite athletes are at greater risk. And again, where you would probably normally get it diagnosed is you don't have your normal periods. Maybe you go to a doctor, they notice now you're osteoporotic too, and then they start talking to you about your eating and realize you have a disordered eating pattern with that. Okay. Again, they're going to be constantly in an energy deficit, and so again, also with those things, you're going to see decline in performance. May or may not be associated with the disordered eating, but again, you know, they may be restricted, helping you get lighter. It's important to see an increase, but they don't. And those with disordered eating are at greater psychological risks. Again, amenorrhea, so absence or suppression of menstruation, result of low energy availability and hormone disruption because they're not eating enough, not due to low body fat stores or stress of exercise. Amenorrhea is greater than 6 months will likely affect your hormone. So again, hormone fluctuations. You need normal hormone fluctuation within the cycles to be healthy. When you're not hitting those, you know, and having the right amounts at the right time, you know, there's health detriments that can happen. You know, one of which is if you don't have enough period cycles and things like that, you may become infertile over time. Osteoporosis, low bone mineral density, and structural deterioration results of low estrogen concentration. Again, you're at greater risk for stress fractures. So again, with distance sports, you know, the pounding that your body might go through is going to put you at even greater risk. And early intervention is important. Okay? So that healthy bone on the left, osteoporotic bone, you can see all the space with that, a lot more space than bone. Prevalence of stress fractures according to menstrual history. Average number of menses per year is, again, you can see when the menstrual cycles go down, osteoporosis and the amount of percentage amount of fracture goes up. Prevalence of female athlete triad components. Again, you can see it goes up with as you look at female athlete triad, all three components. In elite athletes versus control group is higher. Disorder eating and menstrual dysfunction is higher in elite athletes. The disorder eating, low bone mineral density is greater in the control group. Again, the control, with that one, it might be the lack of the exercise might lead to that. Low menstrual dysfunction, low bone mineral density, higher in the control. So prevention and intervention, again, screening is important. Some sports are just athletes in high-risk sports, talking to them and just, making them aware of it, checking in on them, having good communication is going to be key. Early intervention is critical. Coaches need to establish a culture that supports normal eating, that they don't determine the athlete's weight or body comp part of the goals, just performance. Don't suggest the body weight to be reduced. Refer to a sports dietitian to help them to develop good eating patterns that will help build their body so that they're successful. Help them plan appropriate caloric and food intakes. And coaches do not cause eating disorders, but can literally create conditions that encourage them. So be careful of what you say and how you say it. So again, eating disorders are life-threatening psychiatric conditions. Early identification, intervention, treatment are critical. Normal eating is flexible, so if you're not flexible in your eating, think about that. Eating behavior falls along a continuum, so you can move in one direction, or the other. And again, as long as you're coming back to the middle, you're doing good. Female athlete triad, low energy availability, hormonal disruption, low bone mineral density, serious medical condition. And coaches do not cause eating disorders. Again, a coach, that will never be their goal, but they may just, unwittingly do it. Okay? So that's eating disorder chapter. And if you guys have any questions on this, please feel free to ask me when we go over this in our review when we do the Blackboard Live, or you guys can shoot me emails, or I guess if you're watching this on YouTube, write something on there and I'll answer your questions. I'm going to stop the recording and see you guys next time.